Hello and welcome to the Arabic Hour. My name is Ghanwa Hakim. Today we'd like to welcome to our program Palestinian activist Nidal Al-Azraq.
What has been happening since 2004 until today in these refugee camps, this group has been targeted heavily by the Israeli army, heavily through arrestments and imprisonments.
Mr. Al-Azraq is a Palestinian refugee who was born and raised in Aida Refugee Camp in Bethlehem, the West Bank, Palestine. He holds a bachelor's degree from the Harvard Extension School, in which he received the Dean's List Academic Achievement Award and the Derek Bach Public Service Prize. From 2001 to 2003, Mr. Al-Azraq was a volunteer at the Lajee Center, a youth organization in Aida Camp. From 2003 to 2005, he served as the administrative director of the center. Since then, he has continued to work with Lajee in return trips, coordinating international summer camps that bring together international volunteers and Palestinian youth, teaching human rights, and leading a delegation of Palestinian youth to Belgium for a cultural exchange program. Among his many publications include A Refugee's Childhood in the West Bank and a documentary entitled Degrees of Incarceration. He co-authored with Amahl Bishara The Child, an encyclopedic companion, and The Boy on the Wall, a bilingual children's book produced with the Lajee Center and published in the West Bank. Currently, Mr. Al-Azraq is the executive director of onefor2.org, a human rights organization that focuses on helping Palestinian communities access to clean water. Today's interview with Mr. Al-Azraq features a discussion on his activism work and the state of Palestinian youth in the occupied territories.
Thank you, Ghanwa, and we are so happy today to have with us Nidal Al-Azraq. Nidal, I want to just take a minute and remind our audience of the history of Israel and Zionism, and we'll do this together. I think it's important for our audience to recognize that Israel, the Zionist movement from the beginning, wanted all of Palestine. That they pretended to accept a portion of it through conquest, not through the partition plan in 1948. They took the rest of it. Ben-Gurion always said to his followers, well, the first part is to establish ourselves. The second part we will expand. And so the 67 war allowed them to control, and immediately they took over water, they took over the electric grill, they began to put in settlements, they began to confiscate land. They have now politicized water and electricity. They have done things such as trying to limit education. It's typical of a colonial power. We saw it in South Africa. You have spent a great deal of time in Palestine. You were actually part of the Aida Refugee Camp. And now you go back every summer and you do some work in the West Bank area. So fill us in on what is happening and how is the process that the Zionists initiated from their very beginning of taking over all of Palestine and trying to limit, restrict, cleanse as much as possible the Palestinians who are there and also those who still exist within Israel itself.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you. It's great to be here again on the Arabic Hour. This summer I had the opportunity to work not only in Aida Camp, in 12 different refugee locations across the West Bank.
And 12 communities, 12 camps? Or?
It's like mostly refugee camps and other refugee communities outside the refugee camps and some villages in the West Bank, from Jenin to Hebron. And to add to what you said about the ethnic cleansing and the Zionist plan, the plan is moving really fast. Because what I noticed this summer, if you look at the geography and the demography of the West Bank, let's say, or the historic Palestine, you will notice that Palestinians only live on around 11 to 12%.
Yes, it's broken down into little fragments.
And this 11 or 12% is not one unit, it's not one body.
No.
So for example, if you want to travel from Bethlehem to Ramallah or to Nablus, you'll be passing through settler roads, checkpoints, settlements, etc., etc., etc. So practically, Israel and the Zionist movement is moving fast and unfortunately successfully to conquer and to take and to steal the land. About the water and the natural resources, just a quick comment here. Much of the aquifers in the West Bank are located in Area C. And we know that Area C is around 60% of the West Bank. And
let's just tell our audience what A, B, and C are again.
Yeah. So Area A, this is according, to the last peace agreements of Oslo. Area A is supposed to be fully controlled by the Palestinian Authority, which is actually not. And we have Area B, which is supposed to be under the Palestinian Authority civil administration, which is also not. But Area C is fully controlled by Israel. So in Area C, you're talking about 60% of the West Bank, fully controlled by the Israeli army, of course, with settlements. And much of the natural resources in the West Bank are located in Area C. So Israel is really in control of all of these natural resources, especially water. But I really want to talk about also the my experience in this 4 months, and actually my experience through the past 12 years quickly, because I spent the past 12 years working intensively inside refugee camps across the West Bank with young generations. And what I have witnessed so far, there has been really a very smart plan by the Israeli army and the Israeli Secret Service against this generation.
The generation that is adolescent to adulthood?
Yeah. For example, if we think of the Second Intifada.
Yes.
So what happened in the Second Intifada? Israel is really, unfortunately, is really smart in what they're doing, and we don't pay a lot of attention to what Israel is doing. So in 2001, from 2001 until the end of 2003, Israel really succeeded to clean the Palestinian streets from the active and good leaderships through assassinations, sending them to the exile, and through sentencing them life sentence in the prison. And they left the street after that to the Palestinian Authority, which unfortunately did not do much to help the streets. So within these refugee camps and Palestinian areas, there is this generation, young generation, you're talking about ages 14 to 18 to 20 years old, grew up, through Oslo period and witnessed the Second Intifada. And they grow up with this memory of the glory of the First Intifada. And the occupation was heavily present in their communities and wanted to resist the occupation. They live in overcrowded places, in refugee camps. They live in really miserable situation in a place that lacks a lot of services, everyday services. So they really have no choice except to resist and fight for their rights. And here, since 2004, this is what I have been witnessing really. Since 2004 until today, Israel has been really focusing on breaking the young generation, children and youth, especially in refugee camp.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment so you can bring into that discussion.
Yeah.
Netanyahu started with what he called the peace economy. That you don't have to talk about a state. Oslo was dead. They played that out, got more settlements, took more land, and once they finished using that to do more ethnic cleansing and put more settlements in, he started talking about a peace economy. And basically what he seemed to mean by that was to build up Ramallah. And so you have a lot of development, and not real development, but a lot of activity in Ramallah, and homes and cars and so forth. And that the peace economy, as he calls it, is that you would become so invested in this new development that the state wouldn't matter. But of course he only focused on a certain class, a class that really belongs also to the Palestinian Authority. And they got vested interest in this. So the people that you are talking about who want to resist are predominantly people from the camps, those who are refugees from 48 or their descendants, as well as perhaps rural people, rural villages. So if you could elaborate on that, how you're seeing also this bifurcation in class.
That's a very good question, Elaine. Thank you. I mean, if you look at the Palestinian society, you know, we're still under occupation. And for the leadership, the Palestinian leadership, this is if they have in their agendas any type of liberation agendas or to end the occupation, they will pay really full attention and invest all their resources in these communities, the refugee camps and the rural villages, because those are the ones who you need for confrontation, to confront the Israeli army, to fight the occupation, you know, not the upper class and the elite class in the Palestinian society. Those are the ones who are always ready, you know, to fight the occupation. But those people, they need, you know, elements of strength. You need to empower them. You need to take care of them. You need to pay attention to the human aspect in these communities. You mentioned Ramallah. You know, I worked in 2 refugee camps in Ramallah this summer, in Qalandia Refugee Camp and in Jalozon Refugee Camp.
And they're different from the residents of Ramallah.
10 minutes walking from downtown Ramallah, 10 minutes, and the Palestinian Authority is did not even step a foot in these refugee camps. Overcrowded, miserable. It's an open field for the Israeli army to invade every night, every second night, to arrest, to shoot, to kill, to bother people. The services is really miserable. The schools are overcrowded in these refugee camps. And it's amazing when you walk only 10 minutes, for example, from Qalandia Refugee Camp to downtown Al-Manara, Ramallah, you see this big bubble that's full of internationals, not only Palestinians, internationals and big corporations and big organizations like the World Bank and restaurants and hotels and things like that. And you'll get a sense as a Palestinians, this does not represent me. Does not represent or reflect on the real Palestinian situation inside the refugee camp. So within these areas, the refugee camps and rural villages, there's so much to talk about in terms of like everyday services. For example, the refugee camps, they do not receive services from the municipalities of the cities because they're not allowed, because it's a refugee camp. It's supposed to be responsible by the United Nations, because we are still recognized as refugees under the UNRWA, internationally and locally. Yet the UNRWA, the United Nations, decreased their services from 80% to 20% inside the refugee camps since Oslo, 93, 94, until today. To add into that, the Palestinian Authority is not investing even 1% in these refugee camps. So, and this brings us to the question, how do people survive in these refugee camps? Of course, they are very vulnerable, open for the Israeli occupation. You know, we spent this 4 months dealing with Israeli invasions and clashes and shootings and arrests and killing in these refugee camps. So practically we worked for the 4 months under fire, me, my wife, and my 4-year-old child as well, you know.
This was this past summer. And this was after the alleged kidnapping of the 3 Israeli settlers that were killed, and which they blamed on Hamas, but was not done by Hamas.
It was not done by Hamas.
And they've admitted that, but then they said it was 2 rogue Palestinians.
That's
and
true.
They actually haven't produced a picture of them. I mean, they
That's
disappeared.
True. That's true. Actually, you're right, but things have been going on, like clashes and invasions and shootings.
Always.
Even before the kidnapping of 3 settlers, during the war in Gaza, and after the war in Gaza, and until today. When I call my family, when I open the local news, the Palestinian local news, to read about what's going on there, it is still happening. It's an ongoing thing.
They accelerated this during the whole that episode.
A lot.
And you still have a lot of people in jail.
Yes.
Let's get back, and that's part of the cleansing or the demoralizing. Let's get back to the work that you do with these disenfranchised people who really live in Palestine, but people think of Ramallah as Palestine, as the outside world. So tell us the kind of work that you do and how are these people surviving?
Well, first, we need to think of the place as a refugee camp or a rural village. These are overcrowded places. There's no open space inside these spaces. They lack a lot of services, surrounded by concrete walls and watchtowers and snipers and Israeli military bases around them, are open for the Israeli army to come and attack and to do anything, anytime they want, without anyone to stop them, except the people and the resistance that's happening in these areas and locations. My concerns is with the new, over the new generation, the children and the youth who live in these locations, especially in refugee camps. What has been happening since 2004 until today in these refugee camps, this group has been targeted heavily by the Israeli army, heavily through arrestments and imprisonments. And this did really change the demography in the refugee camp. And this generation in 2004 was arrested when they were like 13 to 16 years old. Now they are 27 to 29 years old, and they have been in prison or arrested for over 5 or 6 times. So practically they spend almost half their lives inside the prison, facing really severe torture, physically and psychological torture. They went to prison as children, did not know how to deal with the interrogators, didn't know the interrogation techniques, the prison environment. So the goal is to break this generation by the Israel. What Israel missed, what the Palestinian Authority missed, what the United Nations missed, that yes, you are trying to break this generation. Now they are like young men, males and females in these refugee camps, but you lock them in a big prison. What do you expect from them? Even if you try to break them, they will revolt against and again and again against first their living conditions, because we are human beings. We react to the environment around us. So until now, this generation has been targeted and the Israeli army re-arrest them over and over and over again, and they come out of prison, they don't find opportunities, they get involved with confrontations and fighting the occupation, and it's happening like all the time. Like my work and so many people's work is to try to protect this generation, try to create a ground, a safe ground, an environment for this generation through education, through finding opportunities, either education opportunities or work opportunities.
And do you have any support in terms of resources for your work?
Yes, unfortunately not from the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately not from the United Nations. It is from people like us, Elaine, friends around the world who believes in this cause and support this cause. One thing we focus on our work is to educate these young generations around the issue of identity and memory. It's very important for us as Palestinians to keep these two important topics alive in our new generations. It's very important for them to know who they are. They were born as Palestinians, but they're Arab. They live in this Middle East. They speak Arabic. They have Arab cultures inside them. Yet Israel planted a third identity inside them, of being a refugee. And many generations in Palestine, they were born as refugees in refugee camps. So for them, how do they deal? It's very easy to deal with your identity as Palestinian Arab. This is a national identity. But how do you deal with this identity of being a refugee? Do you hold on it? Do you drop it? Do you adapt it? Do you accept the fact that you live in a refugee camp and that's it? I try so hard in my work with these young youth to tell them that it is an identity that was forced on you. You hold on it until return, and you drop it. And it's very challenging and it's very hard work. But also it is very important in our work to educate them about our memory. The memory is very important for us as Palestinians.
Absolutely.
Not only to know the history, but to know the history, to know who's responsible and what happened and who did it and who participated in it, to have a full image of what happened to us and how and who and all of these questions that they need to understand fully. And this education is when they grow up, they will have a good level of education to help them decide where to go and what to do in their life. And for Palestine, for us as Palestinian refugees, of course, it's very important to remember these things because we live under occupation.
How do you carry out your educational program? I mean, the point is when they have been in prison for so long, they're robbed of their education in a sense is nil. So when they come out, obviously they have the education from having been in jail and understanding the horrors of it so that they get street smart. How do you give them other tools so that they can develop a strategy to deal with this identity that's been foisted on them, as well as to resist and to look for their rights? How do you do that?
That's an excellent point, and this is like one of the main pillars of our work. As yes, we provide services, we educate them, but we don't want to diminish or demolish the culture of resistance among these generations. I remember in 2004 and 5, and we still doing that, when Israel started targeting this generation through arrests, and they were like used to take them really harsh interrogation techniques, and they will force them to confess on things they did not do to have longer sentences. So we start doing like training sessions on the birds, asafir, which is the Palestinian collaborators who work with the Israelis inside the prison to trick detainees or prisoners to confess. We start bringing ex-prisoners who have the experience with that and educate the youngs on how to figure out who's a collaborator, how to deal with the interrogator, if you're forced even to confess, how to do that and what to say, what to talk about with the interrogator. And when you hear about this, you will get a sense, oh my God, that's horrible. How you train your kids on that? But this is the reality they live in, and this is these are facts on the grounds. They will be arrested and they will be shot and interrogated and tortured, and they really need to learn how to deal with it. And other elements we bring to the table to empower this generation, to keep it hold on highly and very important principles. Yes, you are a refugee, but that doesn't mean like you belong to this refugee camp. For example, we bring personal experiences to them. For them as young, they will be like, I am a refugee, this is my refugee camp, I want to defend the refugee camp, this is my hometown, and etc., etc., etc. So we tell them, as a matter of fact, you shouldn't be really proud of this refugee camp. You shouldn't really be that attached to this refugee camp because you have a home. Aida Camp is part of Palestine, yes, but you are a refugee. Your main responsibility, and duty when you grow up is to return to your village. After you return to your village and gain this right, you can decide. You can come back and live in this refugee camp. For example, you woke up every morning, you see the United Nations sign. It's a message to tell you that you're not normal. You live in a place that doesn't belong to you. And this is a big issue for us. You live in a place that doesn't belong to you. You live in a place that is incarcerated, like segregated from the community by so many variables. You live in a place that was segmented by being troublemakers, an area for the Israeli army to come and shoot, arrest, and do whatever they want to do. So you shouldn't really, as Palestinian and Palestinian refugees, attach to this place so much. Yes, we love I will teach him, I personally love the people in the camp. I love my memory in the camp. But I never liked the camp as a geographic location.
Just a quick question. Most of the people in Aida Refugee Camp, are they from a particular village that now Israel controls?
Well, that's another hard fact for the refugees in Aida Camp, because, for example, they came from 26 different villages. And their villages it's practically half hour or 40 minutes in the car away
Yeah.
from the camp, and some 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about two types of refugees, or two groups of refugees, 48 and
Yes,
67.
And 67.
You know,
Yes.
for example, especially the 67 refugees, practically if they go to the third floor in their houses, they can see their village.
Mhm.
Like in Malha
Yes.
village that's very close to Aida Camp in Bethlehem, and Slayib, which is
Yes.
now the huge settlements they call Gilo settlements. And they see these villages. We try to take them to, we used to take them a lot to their villages. Because, you know, Israel had a law like if you are...
Under 16 or is
No,
it?
they changed it.
If you
You
were
need
under
to be-
16, you used to be able to.
Now,
Go
if you're
into-
under 13 years old,
Now it's under 30.
it was 16, but now under 13 years old. If you're under 13 years old, you're allowed to go. So sometimes we send them with internationals to their villages. Sometimes we manage to get permits for one person, and it will take like a whole bus of children to their villages. And the shocking thing when they go to their villages, and this is really a big lesson for them and their families, they see much of their villages are empty. And they have been empty since 48.
Yeah, those,
And this
those are
is-
the ones that are less near the coast.
Yeah,
Yes.
less near the coast. And this like brings them a question, and they ask it, if these villages are empty and they have been empty since 48, why can't we go? We won't affect any demographic presence of the Jewish Israeli community there, or etc., etc. So most of the work we do with them, first we need to know that we work under a really tough environment. For the past 12 years of my work with these young folks, we've lost a lot of children, a lot of youth. Some have been killed. Many have been badly injured. The majority of them have been locked in prison not once or twice, 6 times and 7 times. So you work under really a lot of things. And you invest all your resources and all of your energy in them, and they could go just like that. As we say it there, in a bullet. A passing bullet from an M16 through the watchtowers and the snipers around the camp. It would take the life of this young man that you invest, 10 or 12 or 13 years of work on him. Many of them have succeeded.
Tell me, do the Israelis attempt to interfere in your work? And if so, how? That's one question. The other question is, do you try to salvage any of the collaborators? I mean, many of the collaborators became collaborators under pressure, some of them for money. So those are just two questions I think would interest us.
Yes, I mean, the place where I work in Aida Camp, for example, has been under attack for so many times. And many of its members and volunteers have been in prison, and some of them are actually still in prison right now, and some of them were badly injured. For example, the head of the media unit, he's 23 years old right now. I started working with him when he was 10 years old. 10 years old. I worked with him, 12, 13 years to bring them to the level where he would be the head of the media, very successful filmmakers and photographer. And he won a lot of local and international awards. And he was covering the clashes in the camp, part of his work. And he was shot in the face. And he almost lost his life. He was shot in the face inside Lajee Center, inside the organization we work in, And
that's the center where you teach.
That's the community center where I teach and I do my workshops. And he was shot inside the center, in his face. And after, a few days, he raised a case against the soldier who shot him, because he photographed the soldier who shot him. And Israel came and arrested him. And of course, when they came and arrested him, they beat him really harshly in front of his family. And they took him to jail. And they said, you drop the case against the soldier, we'll release you. They released him. He did not drop the case, but he still have a court. The head of the activities, which is like 26, 7 years old, he's in prison right now. 3 or 4 of the DABCA group that we raised when they were like 6 years old, now they're like 16 and 17 years old. 3 of them are in jail now. They have been arrested by the Israeli army, are in prison right now. So yes, the place where I work is under a heavy attack by the Israeli army. This is like, I don't want to talk about the shootings and breaking the doors and the windows and the cameras. That's happening all the time.
Yeah, well, you have the wall right
Absolutely.
Slap up against your...
Oh yeah, yeah. You stand in the balcony. It's like in your face.
And the watcher, and they can see you, and they can snipe at you, and they can...
I mean, also not only that, is the awful thing about these watchtowers. You know, the soldier will go to this watchtower. It's like higher on the houses.
Yeah.
And the soldiers, they can see inside the houses and inside the bedrooms. And the houses that are next to this watchtower, they will always be closing the windows, especially the bedroom windows and the house windows, because they don't want, because the soldiers will just stand there with this binocular. They don't need binocular. They can see without a binocular inside the houses. So it's not only dangerous, but also humiliating. A situation that people live in. So this is really the type of place we conduct our work in Elaine, and it's one of the hardest things in our work is when you lose somebody. When you lose somebody that you worked with over 10 years or over 12 years.
Does this demoralize others, or does it motivate them more to keep working and keep their resistance and develop their memory? I mean, when you lose someone, what does it do to the others?
It's a lot of work. That's also a good question, but this is a lot of work from our part. It's not only when they lose somebody, when they themselves go to prison and they go through really severe interrogation, physical interrogation, to the level they will be sent to the hospital once or twice during the interrogation. When they come out, they need a lot of support, they need a lot of help, not only physical help or finding opportunities, but also psychological help and mental help. And we do all of this. The first step after they come out of prison is to bring them back to the community. They need to become back active members of the community. And this is one of the strong elements we use with these young generations who come out of prison, is quickly work with them and find them a place again to become active members of the community. But also when they are in prison, their friends, if like they arrested one from the dancing group, the DABCA group, you know, his friends, males or females, you know, and they keep hearing about his news and the interrogations and the humiliations, and he went to the hospital. You go to them, you don't want to scare them from the situation. At the same time, you don't want to like tell them, this is your responsibility to go to jail and to get arrested or killed, you know? So you need to protect the culture of resistance, but at the same time, inside them. But at the same time, you're talking about children, 12 and 13 and 14 years old. You have other responsibilities right now to take care of. You have your education, you have a lot to learn about before you jump into the resistance, because this Israeli army, the environment, the situation is much bigger and much stronger than you. Yet you cannot control it. They live in pretty miserable situation, bad environment politically and geographically, and all of a sudden they can't take it, they can't handle it. They see themselves in the midst of this chaos inside the refugee camps and resisting the occupation and participating in demonstrations, trying to take down the wall, which they did twice in the camp, but it costed them a lot of losses and injuries and arrests because they did that. And you need to do a lot of follow-up with them. You need to do a lot of follow-up with their families at the same time, because you meet with them a few hours a day. They go back to the family. The family itself also needs a lot of work inside the camps, because it's big families. The father always busy looking for jobs to support the family. It's a lot of social problems in the family due to employment and some poverty and lack of services inside these families. So the children and youth, they also live in a really tough environment inside the house. So I'm talking, and I always said it, we need an army of activists, an army of social workers to come and help us in this work.
Let's elaborate a little more by the culture of resistance, because most of the resistance that we see active in Palestine today is nonviolent resistance. And yet when the wall is there and you can't get through it, it isn't violent to try to break it, but violence happens when the Israelis come to stop you. There's still stone throwing that goes on, is that correct?
Oh, of course.
And but how do you define, when you discuss this with the young people, how do you define the culture of resistance, and how do you think it should be or is expressed?
That's a really tough one. That's a really tough one. First, we teach them, and it's obvious, this is an occupation, illegal occupation. And you, as an oppressed, live under this occupation, you have the complete right to resist it. And I can't, me personally, I can't explain it other than that. You have the right to resist it, and you have the right to choose.
They absolutely have.
You have the right to choose the way how to resist the occupation.
I mean, this is also the UN
and this is also
that gives the right to resist any kind of occupation.
This is, we tell them about your right internationally, but it's like when it comes to Palestine, the Palestinians, Israel is the most violating international laws, and the international community is not also paying attention to what's going on in the camp. But we tell them. It is your right not only to resist, is to choose the method and the way how to resist the occupation. We tell them this is the responsibility that you shouldn't get yourself killed or arrested. This is not your goal. You know, your goal is to end the occupation, to fight, to get your rights and things like that.
In other words, be smart about resisting.
Absolutely.
And don't just get upset and lose your life.
Absolutely. But they see other type of resistance around them, like the non-violence and peaceful resistance around them. With these locations I work with, it doesn't work. Really, I mean, it is working in other locations, and but when you come to a refugee camp, especially as an international, and you see people demonstrating and throwing stones, and tell them throwing stones is violent, you're stabbing your foot in the wrong, locations. You're insulting people. No, throwing stones is not violent. Demonstrating and tearing the wall down is not violent. I mean, for God's sake, the first Intifada was built on the stone, and this was recognized by the whole world as non-violent, and it's a right. And this is not to say also, when other groups, when you have the war in Gaza, and the resistance movements were fighting the Israeli army in Gaza, and they used every possible elements they had to fight the Israeli army. It is the right to do that, and it is not my place to critique it as violent or non-violent. It is the people who live under this injustice. It's the people's choice who live under this oppression to decide what to do with it. Now, I don't teach the people I work with about violent or non-violent resistance. It is your right, but first you need to learn about it. You need to learn about your rights, about your history, you need to learn a lot about this occupation. The way they think and the way they deal with you, the way they look at you. You need to think about who's your friends, where you get support. You need to learn about if you're left alone, what do you do? Which is most of the time, refugees in the refugee camps, they are left alone. And they need to be creative in finding ways and solutions for their problems. And they need to be quick in finding these solutions. So we really, in our work, we don't really come across the violent and non-violence issues, but we invest a lot of time to teach them, these are your rights, as a Palestinians. It's not anyone's business to tell you what's wrong or what's right, or to critique what do you do.
Given your conditions, you have the right.
Because you live in this locations. You live in this location with its all difficulties. you find your way and deal with it your way. It doesn't. Many people doesn't like this way. Many people will come to you, internationals and some locals. Well, you really should focus on other methods and other ways. I told them, look, I don't give these young people weapons to go and fight. I don't give them I don't train them to become like anything else. My responsibility is to help them survive this environment, which is tough environment. And if, for example, some representatives will come from Ramallah to visit the camp, and they come to the place where I work with and they will, deliver this big speech of what you should do and things like that. And you will hear one of the teenagers stands up and would say, well, you live in Ramallah, why don't you come and live in Aida Camp for a week? And we'll see then how you would deal with the situation here. And this is like a question by the teenagers. And one thing to mention, Aida Camp, the Palestinian Authority did not step a foot in it for over 15 months.
I mean, it's clear that the Palestinian Authority really lives in their bubble. But let's go back for a minute to the collaborators. And I raise this because, in Boston there is a terrible film. It's really a propaganda film because the ending is like Hasbara, if you will. And it's about a collaborator. And he came and he lived here and he wrote a book called The Son of Islam. And, he, if you look at the story, he really didn't need to become a collaborator, but he tries to show that he kept his father alive, who was a Hamas person. By being a collaborator. So tell us a little bit about how people become collaborators, and do you deal with any who want to extract themselves from that role?
Well, this is
'cause this is always a problem.
This is a huge problem that Palestinians really has been facing since even before the occupation, before 48 even, And as we know the history, of course. First, I will answer your question, but first, how do we educate our youngs about this topic? It's very easy to tell them and to show them what type of life the collaborators have. They're not only neglected socially, but also the treatment they receive from the Israeli secret services and from the army, it's really bad. Law services disrespect. The majority of them are drug addicts and things like that. So it's not really something you should look for as a person to become a collaborator. How do they become collaborators? There's so many ways for the Israelis to trick Palestinians to become collaborators. One of the most effective tools they use, which is known among Palestinian societies, is they target poor communities and poor families, people who really struggle with money, and they trick them through provide for them work and work permits to go to work in Israel.
They give them some perks.
To give them some perks and as soon as this person is being trapped or fall in this trap, Israel will change their treatment to this person 180 degrees because you are a collaborator now. It's very hard for you. This is what they told him. It's even impossible for you to clean yourself. So they start giving really pennies and force them to come and live inside the prison to work as collaborators inside the prison, force them to spy on their families and spy on their communities, and the threat is if you don't do it, will expose you to your community. They use a lot about the sexual assaults inside the prison and inside the community. Many collaborators were trapped through filming them, and using these materials against them. Either you become a collaborator, or we will, broadcast this video or show these pictures to the community. Youngs are very dangerous. When they are arrested, like when you arrest a 13, 14, 15 years old a child who has no idea about the prison environment and things like that, and go through this really difficult conditions at the prison, it's easy for the mukhabarat to trick these young detainees to become collaborators and how the community deal with them.
The Shin Bet.
Yeah. And how the community back home, when the community, for example, Aida Camp knows that this person is a collaborator.
Do you get any that come to you and say, I was a collaborator, I'm ashamed, can you help me? I mean, do you have any of these at all, or is it just basically once they're a collaborator, they're finished?
Most likely, once they are a collaborator, they're finished. But the thing is for their children. If a person is a collaborator, their children, sometimes their wives, are innocent. So you should not look at them as collaborators. Sometimes we will have children and youth come to us and told us, look how other people are looking at us in the community, you know, we're being like socially surrounded or neglected and things like that. And we try to bring them and to host them and host their children, work with their children because it is not their fault that their father is a collaborator or sometimes their mother. It's not only the men got trapped in this business. Also female gets trapped in this business as well. But as soon as you start to become a collaborator, that's the end of your life, actually. As Palestinians, that's the end of your life. You will be not only neglected, you'll be humiliated, you'll be...
This is what happens in many of these, it happened in South Africa, it happened...
And everywhere, it's not only a Palestinian thing,
It's part of a settler colonial community that knows how to trick these people into becoming collaborators. And I mean, even at the beginning of Israel, after the 48 war, for the Palestinians that remained in Israel, they gave them different perks, and they give, if they got them this information.
That's true.
That's been recorded now, and there's a book out. I think it's by Shira Robinson. Anyway, let us get back to the West Bank for the moment and the communities you worked with. Water is a big issue. I mean, they use every technique to enrage people, to starve them for water, for electricity, for just daily living. And then the wall, of course, breaks these fragments. I mean, there's 64 different fragments in these area A and B. Tell us about water and the fact that people try to save water through tanks and cisterns, and these are destroyed because the Israelis are always saying, oh, no, they give enough water. So tell us a little bit about the water and electricity problem.
Yeah. Well, first we need to understand that Israel controls and uses 73% of West Bank aquifers and West Bank water and gives only 27% to Palestinians, yet 10% of which goes to Israeli settlements, leaving only 17% to Palestinians. So imagine 17% of the total water in the West Bank for Palestinians. For Palestinians.
Yeah.
So, and during the hot, long summer, and we know summer in Palestine, not like here, it rains or, no, it's a dry.
No, you just have one short rainy season.
Absolutely. So water, for example, comes to Aida Camp in the summer once every week, once every 2 weeks, and sometimes, without exaggeration, once every 2 months. And when the water comes, it doesn't come like for a whole 24 hours or 48 hours. It comes from 8 to 12 hours. So imagine you live in a place where in the hot summer, big family, you don't have water for weeks. So when water comes to the camp, All people, they have a lot of water tanks in the rooftops.
Yes.
So they usually, when the water comes,
they
pump it into these tanks and they store it and they use it carefully. The problem, when there's no water in these tanks, you know, the pipelines under the grounds are metal, and many tanks are metal and some black plastic.
And they
So these parts and these water tanks without water for weeks under the heat, it's a raw ground, it's a rich ground for bacteria and contamination.
Yes.
You know, and this actually resulted in so many sickness among children through diarrhea and fever and etc., and this is due to the water. Actually, for the past 2 years, we have been testing a team of water engineers, actually from Tufts University and local teams from Aida and 143 also organization, have been doing a lot of water testing for the past 2 years in Aida Camp, and do a lot of education to people how to clean the water in a quick, easy, cheap way. And we found a lot of bacteria, a lot of contaminations, and went to the hospitals, and we took the statistics from the children's hospitals, and they said, yes, most of the sickness that we have among our children, it's from the water and the lack of water. It's not from the water itself, it's from the lack of water that creates things.
And then the bacteria.
And the bacteria that grows. I mean, some of the quick solutions for it, I mean, many people don't have space inside the camp. If people have space, they will dig a well, a small cistern, and collect the rainwater. But they don't have the space. Practically, Elaine, you can cross almost half of the camp without walking in the street, from a rooftop to a rooftop to a rooftop. You know, because houses are really attached to each other. So
I understand too, and of course it's always in the media, and not the mainstream media, but those in the West Bank who do have cisterns and have tanks on top of their roofs are sometimes just shot for no reason at all by the soldiers. And so does that happen also in Aida?
Oh yeah, I mean, when clashes happens, you know, sometimes this soldier who stands on, sits in the air-conditioned watchtower will be having fun targeting the water tanks, because they know how important this water in the tank for the people in the camp.
Quick question, because we were about to close, our time has ended. The Israelis have used a technique on people, that is that they spray whole communities. They did this in East Jerusalem recently with skunk water.
Yes.
And they do this the hell of it.
Oh my God.
And so, and of course people's homes get saturated with the smell and that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well first in 2004 Israel came to the US and they took a sample of the skunk, the animal, from here in the US, and they develop it, they add so many chemicals on it, and they use it against Palestinians. So this big machine comes to the camp and starts spraying not the streets or the cars only, the houses. And this things they use, the skunk, they call the skunk water, but it's not only skunk water, it's really bad chemical water. Stick in the ground in the house for weeks in the heat, and if you try to clean it with soap, it will become even more because it has chemicals on it. So, I mean, if you look at the videos or the news and you see this, it's an unbelievable way. You know, we see this machine spraying, it's like collective punishment. And what makes it worse even, after the machine, they will throw 200, 300, 500 tear gas at once on the whole camp. Practically they gas the whole camp. So imagine the land on the ground absorb these chemicals with the tear gas inside them. Even after a week, if you try to walk in the streets, you could smell, your eyes will be tearing from the smell of the tear gas and these chemicals. And this happens not once a week or once a month. No, it happens all the time. It's an ongoing thing. So this is one of the most humiliating things in Aida Refugee Camp and so many areas in the West Bank, is this machine will come and spray you as if you are not a human being. if you're like something else, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just to humiliate people and
Absolutely.
to degrade them and to make them feel like they're just nothing.
Absolutely right.
One final half a minute comment from you. Are the people steadfast, or are they getting so demoralized that they're beginning to think they should move out? And, and where would they go?
They're steadfast, but they're very close to be demoralized, because we should pay attention to the human aspects. If you want people to stay holding on everything, you need to provide services for them. And unfortunately, this is what the PLO and the international community failed to provide to those people. And yes, they are still samdeen, as we said in Arabic,
yes.
but they need a lot of support. We need to pay a lot of attention to the human aspects, along with the resistance. We need to pay attention to the human aspects in people's life.
Thank you very much for being with us. I can see that we really need to have another session because there's always so much to say.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, Nidal.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That was an interview with Palestinian activist Nidal Al-Azraq regarding his work as a Palestinian activist in the West Bank.
You are watching The Arabic Hour, a program of news, views, culture, cuisine, and the Arab American experience. To view today's program or any previous programs, log on to our website at www.arabichour.org.
Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of all of the volunteers here at The Arabic Hour, this is Ghanwa Hakim, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
The Arabic Hour has been brought to you in part by the William G. Abdullah Memorial Library, a resource center for information and education on the Arab American experience, the American Arabic Benevolent Association, ABA, an umbrella association for community endeavors, the Nicholas G. Barham Veterans Association and Ladies Auxiliary, providing veteran services, scholarships with community pride, and by our members as well as contributions from viewers like you.